before the fleet even ended up in the next sector with the next species, a bunch of us got a briefing on what we would find, and I was hoping they were kidding, because I kept asking, "You're kidding, right?" Apparently they weren't. Cassie and Talia and everyone else were simply telling us how the next one was a whole bunch of goblins. At least that's what we called them. They had a different name, which was extremely hard to pronounce. I swear, every other... It is impossible for me to even say these damn words. I can understand it just fine with translation magic. The problem is getting my tongue to move the right way to actually pronounce it right. But these goblins, as it would turn out, have a whole bunch of different type of clans or sects to them that really make things difficult when it comes to dealing with them. Which is mainly why we had a lot of confusion when they were first being explained to us. And since I got a good idea now, I can explain to you very, very easily. As it is, there are several different types of goblins. Most of them are only about 3.5 feet tall. Yeah, maybe eye level with your belly button for most people. That being said, they don't all have purely human features. Some are a little thinner, some are girthier, some have only 3 fingers, most have 5, some have black, like really pitch black, like raven hair, others have a type of red. Each of these actually plays into the different type of clans they have over there, and we would learn very quickly that each one of these would actually change the way you had to deal with them. Now, another thing to understand is that they do have a type of hierarchy. We found this out really quick, as when we entered the sector, we were pretty much swarmed by a bunch of their ships. Not that they were firing at us, mind you. I want to say that quick. They were interested. They were extremely curious at what was showing up at their doorstep. Granted, this entire flotilla is mainly, maybe, 12 ships at most. It depends on who has gone back to Earth and if we have everybody here. At the time when we showed up, we had 11. And we had another one jump in about 6 hours later. Then we had to deal with their language, which is very, very confusing. It's a lot of pops and clicks and a lot of kind of strange throat noises, which is extremely difficult for a human to actually mimic. However, it didn't take long when meeting one. I asked it through the tieflings if we could use translation magic so we could understand them. And of course, they were more than willing to do so. This made things very easy, thankfully. However, Cassie was kind of on edge every time we were near one, and I couldn't figure out why. She kept doing something I never thought I'd see her do. She actually would tuck her tail inside her legs, and it would be coming up front, and she was just kind of holding the end of her tail up against the front of her abdomen. I kept looking at her, and I asked, "What are you doing?" She goes, "Just in case." I was like, "Just in case? Just in case of what? You afraid you're going to shit your pants?" A few of the humans got a kick out of that, and Talia, she had completely no idea what I was saying. However, she was instructed to do the same thing with her tail. The only problem is, Talia's tail is much larger, much girthier. They're both about equivalent to the length of their bodies, but Talia being so small, you get where I'm going with this. Regardless of that, we were invited by their own version of a monarchy to come down and converse with them. Of course, we were not the first ones to land. They never allow us magic users to be the first ones in. At least not ones with the same status as me. We're considered kind of precious cargo, VIP, however you want to put that, simply because our ability to wield magic is far beyond most everyone else. I could understand them wanting to keep us safe, but I'll tell you what, it gets annoying when you constantly have people saying, "This is above your pay grade." Motherfucker, I could atomize you with basically a thought. Don't tell me what I can and can't do. Although, to keep things calm, we decided to go down after the first wave had landed. As we landed in their major city, we found out that, yes, because they're small, it was very difficult for us to walk around. In actuality, if I stood straight up, I was walking in and seeing their second floor windows, and I ended up looking a few of them right in the eye. And I found out real fast that modesty is not really a thing with these goblins. It didn't matter male or female. They were all sparsely dressed. Dressed nonetheless, but they were still sparsely dressed. And for some reason, they seemed to be wearing what they would consider their Sunday best. And what I mean by that is very decorative. For the most part, we would see a bunch of them in more casual type of apparel. And as soon as we walked by or they heard some sort of yell, which I found out was, "We have visitors. We have finally got some visitors again." Yeah, that was the actual yell. "We have visitors. We finally have visitors again." They would immediately go and change and come back out in much shinier. I mean, the only thing I can equate it to is simply the people who ride horses. Usually you ride horses in jeans and a t-shirt, but when you go to competitions, you're wearing rhinestones. It seemed that way, at least. We didn't understand the sheer issue we were walking ourselves into, at least not until we got to the royal capital, which was only about a 20 or 30-minute walk. They didn't have any ground transportation. We were surprised on that. We couldn't bring any of our own because it wouldn't fit down the street. The streets were so damn narrow and so small. However, as we were walking, I noticed that Cassie kept clutching her tail. I don't know why. She's never been this nervous before. I didn't understand it. Talia kept waving at the other goblins. They kept waving back. The little ones would come up and like pet on her leg and stuff like that. I had to constantly tell her to stay with us. I mean, she may be in human years, a good 75, 80 years old, but honestly, she still acts like she's 10. And to me, that's what she looks like. So let's face it, my protective instincts were kicking in, wouldn't yours? When we finally got into the capital and we got to the palace itself, we were greeted by their version of emperors, and they were very well dressed. This was a complete inversion to what we could see around us. Every single sculpture, every single painting, every single figurine, everything around us was dedicated to intercourse, to sex in some way, shape, or form or another. I saw statues of goblins twisted in positions. All I could think of is, that has got to hurt. That cannot feel good at all. And it was just crazy. I haven't seen statues set up like this since I saw Pompeii years ago. Holy crap, it was just everywhere. Now, granted, the emperor and the empress actually has more authority, apparently, than the emperor himself. They addressed us in a very polite manner, at least polite for them. And they began to ask us questions about where we came from and what we plan on doing when we're there. Are we a threat to them? Standard political bullshit. It wasn't long before the delegation had them calm down and let them know what was going on and that we were just mapping out the area and trying to make peace with everybody. At least trying to, and it's not been going well. However, the goblins, as we called them, which they thought the name was funny, as it was their word for what we would call 69. They honestly thought that was beyond hysterical when we started calling them goblins all the time. Regardless of that fact, everyone seemed to relax as we were invited to a large banquet, which we all enjoyed. We all sat in the large halls as much food was brought to us. It was different types of fruits, vegetables, not a lot of meat, but a few. We started talking with some of the goblins as they started to tell us how they had also reached the stars, and most of the ships they had flown that we had seen were built by the dwarves. The dwarves being basically the manufacturing hub of the entire universe, it seems like. They even built the ships for the ogres, and they even helped the dragons build theirs, even though most of theirs were still just basically hollowed out rocks. The elves even went into the dwarves themselves, but more to kind of show off elf technology compared to dwarven, although apparently it hurt their pride a little bit when dwarves were very quick to modify their technology to be better than elves, which kind of push the elves farther along to try and repair their own pride. Yeah, fun stuff. Nothing like a little competition to really speed destructive engines along, isn't it? Towards the end of the banquet, we were finally reaching their version of dessert. Now, at this point, Talia had just stuffed herself. In actuality, I could see that her gut was sticking out a little bit. It was kind of a side effect of being from the dragon race. Her and the rest of the Dragonborn were able to just cram an unbelievable amount of food inside them, and their bodies would actually stretch a little for this. And they wouldn't stop eating as long as there was food in front of them. Reason being, the more they ate, the deeper the food coma was. I just had to lower my head and shake my head. Oh, geez, I'm going to have to carry her back, and she's going to weigh a ton. Thank God for magic, I can just elevate her. However, during the whole time, I figured that we would be eating, drinking, having fun. Cassie did not touch her goblet one bit, and she barely ate her food. She was nervous the whole time, and every time I asked her, she kept saying, "I'll be fine, I'll be fine." I know she picked that up from me, the phrase, "I'll be fine." But I kept holding her a little close and rubbing her other arm, just letting her know, okay, I'm here, don't worry. Nothing bad is going to happen. We're among friends. I can tell we're among friends. However, if I knew what was about to happen, I would have grabbed both of them and ran for the fucking door. When the dessert was given to everybody, it did not come out exactly on a tray as we would thought most of the other food did. Although trays did come out, the trays had naked goblins on them, male and female, all covered in different types of desserts. And it was apparently customary to not reach out and grab a finger's worth and deliver it to your mouth, but instead to lick the dessert off the goblin that was laying there. These were usually high status goblins, as this was as their version of honor. I was in complete shock at seeing this. What in the hell, as this, I have no idea how to judge age, but she didn't look more than 20-year-old goblin, was laid in front of me, sitting there with her legs in kind of what they used to call Indian style, with different confections strategically placed down her body, and that crazy grin she gave me. I don't know whether to be excited or scared. I looked over at Cassie. I was like, is this what you were afraid of? She looked at me and said, oh no, it's about to get so much worse. The hooting and hollering from the soldiers is when I realized we were in deep, deep shit. I reached over, I grabbed Cassie by the hand, and I grabbed Talia, and I tried to excuse us as Talia tried to reach out and just grasp a hold of the dessert, which was obviously a sugar-filled confection, and shove some in her mouth. But the little female goblin actually waved her hand and said, no, no, no. And she just pointed at her mouth and said, only this, then stuck out her tongue and pointed at it. And Talia, being a dragonborn, this is not something she would shy away from. She's used to just grabbing things with her teeth. I don't think the young female goblin realized what she was dealing with when Talia almost took an entire chunk out of the goblin's thigh. I had to pull her back because she thought the goblin was actually giving herself as a meal, an actual meal. And I tried to tell her, no, this is not for us. We gotta go now. We have to go now. By the time I even got to the door, maybe a half a dozen others had tried to reach for the door, but the door was actually barred and locked. We're like, what in the flying shit is going on? By the time I turned around and looked, things had escalated into a full-blown clothes are no longer an option type of situation. And I'm just like, what in the hell is going on? I looked at a few of the goblin guards who were holding a type of projectile weapon, and I asked, okay, can you explain to me what the flying fuck knuckles is going on? Tell me why are you doing this? They were confused. This is our way. And please explain it to me slowly so I can understand. For a moment, I actually had to pull Talia back because she thought, oh, that might be fun. I'm like, no, you may have lived longer than me, but you were definitely too young for this shit. And I held her close. I actually had to basically hold her up off the ground and fight her wings as she kept trying to push away. That was not fun, as they kept slapping me in the face. The goblin guard, very politely, which I appreciated, told them that this is the way banquets always end. Goblins are very promiscuous, and yes, they have a completely different word for it, but I really don't want to repeat it. And yet, their ability to produce children is very, very low. The reason they want new groups to come in is that it allows new DNA, new blood to flow into their ranks, and it makes it a whole lot easier for them to actually reproduce. And then I looked over and realized, yeah, they're going to get a lot more than blood. They're going to get filled out like a job application. A few of them already were. When I told the guard I would not be participating, and neither would the girls that I was holding, he got a little mad and called over his chief, and the chief told us that it was a great insult if we left. I was like, in our culture, what you're doing is a massive insult because this is my woman here, and I am protecting this young one. They didn't quite get it. They didn't understand because, again, not part of their culture. However, I did end up showing them that I had a little bit more than just my voice to use, as I levitated the weapon out of the guard's hand, spun it around as though I was using the force, and pointed it at the chief's head. And I just asked very politely, now, will you let us leave, please? With a small wave of his hand, the other guards unbolted the door, and those of us that wanted to leave got the hell out of there. The moans and screams of pleasure that were coming out were almost frightening. I didn't know if they were fighting or if they were, you know where I'm going. Regardless, by the time we even got back, word had spread. Actually, it had spread to the entire town because it seemed like almost the entire fleet had come down for rest and a lot of relax over and over again. As I'm walking by, I could actually see my nephew. He said, oh, yeah, I slipped. I'm like, yeah, you slipped. As I showed going, yeah, you slipped over and over and over again. Yeah, okay, we're out of here. The whole time fighting Talia, she thought it looked fun. I'm like, yeah, it's fun, but you're too young for it. She looked and again stated how old she was. I said, yeah, in your years, you're that old. In our years, you are extremely young. You're not developed enough either. They'll actually do some damage to you. She didn't understand what we were talking about until we saw a group. Oh, God. Ugh. I just threw up my mouth a little bit. Oh, jeez. Let's just say one human female was enjoying more than she expected. Ugh. By the time we got to the ship, I just looked over and said, okay, we're staying in here till the ship leaves. And I went to the pilot. Unfortunately, the pilot wasn't there. I looked out the cockpit window, and there was the pilot on the tarmac. What in the hell have we gotten ourselves into? What the... huh? The few of us that were able to actually maintain ourselves because we were in relationships, and usually those we were in relationships with, came with us. Got back to our respective vessels and tried to hide as best we could. The entire group activity took until the morning, and during the morning, we set up inside the cockpit waiting, and eventually the captain of the ship showed back up, turned on the PA system, and played Reveille as loud as the speakers could in a way to allow people to know that it was time to get their sorry asses up and get their sorrier asses back to the ship. Well, it might not actually been a fight, but we kind of lost a few guys. A few of them either burned themselves out at night And what I mean burned, I mean they actually burned out completely. We found a few of them in a coma. However, others just didn't want to leave at all. They just wanted to stay. Male, female, didn't matter. They just didn't want to go. They were having too much fun. And I suddenly realized as I looked over to Cassie as she was still clutching her tail why she had been holding on to it so much. Apparently, if tieflings ever landed on this planet, it was almost impossible to get off of this planet. The goblins would hold you there with the promise of unending physical pleasures. However, some of the goblins were definitely not my type, as some of them, especially the ones with 3 fingers, had claws for hands and feet. Not really my thing. That being said, it was time for us to get the hell off this planet. A general recall was put out, and thankfully, I could lock all 3 of us, me, Cassie, and Talia, into our room, and we just stayed there and waited till the ship lifted off. Thankfully, that was only a few hours later. However, when the final count was done, our losses were equivalent to that of what we lost in combat. It was just absolutely insane. I couldn't believe what I was seeing, and I was like, oh, God, get us out of this sector now. I told all the chain of command I wanted out of here. If we weren't leaving this sector, I would steal this fucking ship and get us out of here. They were more than willing to get us away from that sector. Unfortunately, we would have to consider those that stayed behind to be a loss. I know what the humans can do. Even if you're magic wielders, there's only so much energy you can lose before your body just collapses and crashes. And we needed to go. We just had to go. And I will have to say this, that my resistance to those urges were only withheld because I had my woman at my side. If it wasn't for that, I might have fell prey to that as well. Oy, the pull of lust is hard. No pun intended. When we finally got out of the next 4 sectors, which surprisingly the goblins went even farther than we expected, they spread out very far, and we figured that they would reproduce far faster, but as it turns out, when we started looking into it, the reason they wanted the new blood is because after a while of mixing all the different goblins together, they had kind of sort of stagnated, in a way. They kept to their own clans normally. They didn't intermix all that much. When they did, there was a massive explosion of population. However, it was not exactly socially acceptable to be going into another clan and mating with another. Though fun, I'm sure, it just wasn't part of their culture, so we had to be very, very careful of that. The fact that they actually had an emperor and empress was surprising, as they were the highest ranking clan as they possibly had. I still don't quite understand their culture and the way their society is set up. It's been explained to me several different times. I still don't get it. All I know is this. The Empress always comes from a certain clan. These clans are the most human-ish looking ones. They're slightly tall for goblins, which they come up to about 3'8" or 3'9". They're usually slightly girthy. However, their bones are not misplaced like you would see a human with dwarfism, but they walk normally. Think of like a halfling and you'll get pretty damn close. That being said, they don't have miscolored eyes. They're very similar to us, even though some other clans have almost black eyes. They look almost like wolf eyes with that yellow iris. But they always have red hair. I don't know why that is, but the Empress always has red hair. Some of her subordinates have jet black hair, but the Emperor and Empress always have red hair. It seems to be some sort of marker of nobility. I don't get it, and I don't give a shit. All I know is we had to get out of there, but holy crap. We went from probably the most lust-filled group of Xenos I've ever even thought was possible, and before we knew it, we were in a sector with something that I kind of wish we had never, ever even heard of. However, before that, we did end up stumbling across one small planet that surprised us. In a sector that was basically looked like it was abandoned by everyone, we found a single planet with a group of creatures. All I can think of is calling them beast personnel. Okay, it's kind of weird. They are humanoid, yet they have extremely high amounts of animal features, in particular, feline. They didn't seem to talk much. They do have a strange language, but we didn't quite fully understand them. Even with my translation magic, I was having a lot of trouble understanding them. Eventually, it came down to them asking us to change them. We had to explain that adjusting even one of them at a time takes a couple of hours and is so completely draining. Last time I did it, I dropped to my knees and puked, like I had just run the 2-mile track at a sub 6-minute pace. It's extremely draining. However, they began to beg us to help them. We didn't figure out why. Well, not until we saw what was in the next sector.